I secretly married and had a child with Adrian, the president from the Beijing business circle. He was gentle and considerate in front of me, yet he never publicly acknowledged my existence. Until I heard the complaints from the baby in my womb. The scumbag dad is accompanying that white moonlight named Annabelle again, and he even said that I am the surprise he prepared for her. Level 1 scumbag behavior detected, activating the pregnancy pain 10 full transfer system. In the next second, Adrian, who was having a candlelight dinner with his white moonlight, suddenly clutched his stomach and vomited all over her. He experienced morning sickness, cramps, and swelling, writhing in pain with a distorted face during important meetings. His white moonlight thought he had a terminal illness and cried, vowing to live and die with him. Meanwhile, I felt light as a swallow and had a great appetite. Adrian finally broke down, kneeling in front of me with red eyes. "Vivian, I was wrong. Please stop vomiting, I'm going crazy from the morning sickness." I touched my belly and smiled. "Oh? But I haven't vomited." When Adrian's call came, I was staring out the window in a daze. The voice on the other end was weak but carried an authoritative tone that brooked no resistance. "Vivian, hurry up and eat some sour plums, I'm uncomfortable." I didn't say anything and hung up directly. The phone screen dimmed, reflecting my expressionless face. The sour plums prepared for me were in the crystal bowl beside me, each one plump and round. I stood up and dumped the entire bowl of sour plums into the trash bin. Then, I opened the food delivery app on my phone, my fingers sliding past the light pregnant women's meals without pausing, and directly typed into the search bar, 9-grid, insanely spicy, hotpot. Place order, pay. Yay. Go, Mom. The baby is starving. A burst of excitement came from my abdomen. I want the spiciest butter hotpot base. Let that scumbag dad also taste the heartburn feeling in late pregnancy. Add a portion of tripe and a portion of kidney, let him know what swelling and leg cramps are. Looking at the baby's order menu, I unhesitatingly added all the recommended dishes to the cart. The delivery arrived quickly. The rich, spicy butter aroma instantly filled the entire living room. I spread out all the dishes, the red oil bubbled in the pot, with chili peppers and Sichuan peppercorns floating and sinking. Just as I was about to pick up my chopsticks, Adrian's video call request popped up. I answered and propped the phone opposite me. On the screen, he was sitting in a high-end restaurant, with Annabelle across from him. She was wearing a white long dress today, with exquisite makeup, looking at Adrian with concern. "Adrian, why do you look so pale? Is your stomach uncomfortable again?" Adrian ignored her. When he saw the hot pot in front of me, his face on the screen instantly tensed. "Vivian, what are you eating?" I didn't answer. I picked up a slice of tripe that had been dipped up and down in the red oil and put it in my mouth. The extreme spiciness exploded in my oral cavity. "Refreshing. Mom, have another slice." Almost at the same time, Adrian on the video suddenly clutched his chest, his face turning deathly pale in an instant, with fine beads of sweat seeping from his forehead. He began coughing violently, a burning sensation spreading from his throat all the way to his stomach. "Adrian, what's wrong?" Annabelle stood up in panic, wanting to pat his back. But Adrian pushed her away abruptly, staring fixedly at me on the phone screen, his eyes filled with red bloodshot veins. His face began to swell at a visible rate. Annabelle's exclamation became shrill, "Adrian! Your face! Why is your face swelling?" I ignored her voice and picked up another slice of scalding hot kidney, rolled it in the sesame oil and garlic paste, and blew on it leisurely. "Yes, yes. That's it. Let him experience the joy of swelling into a pig's head in late pregnancy." The moment I put the kidney slice into my mouth, Adrian's legs kicked out fiercely. He let out a suppressed cry of pain, his whole body sliding off the expensive dining chair, falling heavily to the ground, clutching his calf and twitching incessantly. The restaurant waiters surrounded him, the scene descending into chaos. Annabelle's screams were mixed in. "Humph, just an appetizer, and he can't handle it already?" The baby scoffed disdainfully. I ate even more heartily. The phone vibrated. It was a message from Adrian's special assistant, Daniel. The wording was stern and condescending. "Madam, Adrian orders you to immediately stop this unhealthy diet. His body is in trouble, and you are fully responsible." I closed the message page, too lazy to look at it again. In response, I ordered myself a cup of iced cola filled with ice cubes. When the delivery arrived, the video on the other end hadn't been hung up, the phone had fallen to the ground, the view tilted, showing Adrian being helped to the sofa, with Annabelle crying pitifully. In front of the camera, I tore open the straw packaging and inserted it into the cola cup full of ice cubes. Gulp, gulp. I took a big sip. The icy liquid slid down my throat, taking away the hotpot spiciness, leaving only refreshment. On the other end, Adrian's cries of pain turned into agonized groans. Annabelle's cries turned into hysterical screams. "Doctor! Call a doctor quickly. What's wrong with Adrian?" I pulled out a few tissues, wiped my mouth, and leisurely sipped the cola, appreciating this farce. It wasn't until the sound of a heavy object falling and Annabelle's completely out-of-control cries came from the phone that the video call ended. The world became quiet. I leaned back on the sofa, touching my belly, and softly asked, "Baby, are you full?" Burp. "Almost. Mom, tomorrow I want to eat durian snail rice noodles, the extra stinky and spicy kind." The aromatherapy scent in the top-tier club smelled wonderful. The technician's skills were professional, with just the right pressure. I lay on the soft massage bed, enjoying a rare relaxation during pregnancy. The baby in my womb seemed to enjoy it too, comfortably rolling over. Mom feels so good, the scumbag dad should feel uncomfortable now. Adrian, my nominal husband, was standing at the head of the conference table. He was wearing a custom-tailored suit, full of vigor, preparing to deliver the final summary speech for this successful meeting. He was a favored son of heaven, the business emperor praised by everyone in the Beijing circle. Now, he should experience the most unspeakable pain of a pregnant woman. I felt the technician pressing on my lower back, slowly kneading away the soreness, feeling utterly comfortable. But Adrian would endure this refreshing soreness amplified tenfold. I could almost see the blood draining from his usually composed handsome face. He would force himself to hold on, maintaining his last dignity as the president of Lee Corporation. But that excruciating pain, as if bones were being torn apart, would spread from his lower body to all his limbs, making him unable to stand steady. The old folks on the board would see their wise and mighty leader with trembling legs and cold sweat pouring down. A perfect meeting would end in an extremely absurd manner. The phone vibrated beside me. It was a message from my best friend. A screenshot of Annabelle's Facebook. In the photo, there was an exquisite insulated soup container, captioned, "A loving lunch prepared for Adrian, hoping to bring him some warmth." The location was Lee Corporation building. Here she comes again. She was always like this. During the days when Adrian hid me away, she frequently entered his company and life with the posture of a virtuous wife. Everyone thought that she, Annabelle, was the future mistress of Lee Corporation. And I was just an unsightly surrogate tool. Annabelle carried the soup, gracefully walking into Adrian's office, only to find it empty. Then she would hear the news and anxiously rush to the conference room. She would see Adrian being supported out by the secretary, his face deathly pale, walking with a strangely twisted posture. She would step forward, hold his arm, her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. "Adrian, what's wrong with you? Let's go see a doctor, okay? Don't scare me." Her performance was always so perfectly timed, full of deep affection. Adrian would push her away, not out of impatience, but because the intense pain left him unable to think. He would lock himself in the lounge, enduring it all alone. Because he couldn't let outsiders, especially Annabelle, see his vulnerability and embarrassment. Thinking of this, I sat up from the massage bed. It was time to add some fuel. I changed into loose sportswear and walked into the adjacent private yoga room. Spreading out the mat, I began a set of gentle prenatal yoga. When my body stretched to a certain limit, the baby in my womb moved restlessly, kicking right on my ribs. A dull pain came, making my breath hitch. Mom is exercising, so I want to exercise too. Life never stops, fetal movement never ceases. Let the scumbag dad feel the suffocating sensation of ribs being kicked broken. Good. I took out my phone and dialed Adrian's number. The phone rang for a long time before being answered, with Annabelle's anxious shouts in the background. Adrian, don't answer, rest first. Get out. Adrian's voice, suppressing anger and pain, was hoarsely unrecognizable. The other end quieted, leaving only his heavy breathing. Vivian, this better be something huge. His tone was poor. I didn't speak, just adjusted my breathing and continued my yoga poses. While stretching my body, I deliberately let out one or two subtle gasps from the stretch. What are you doing? Adrian was highly alert. Exercising, my voice sounded relaxed and comfortable. The doctor said more exercise is good for the baby. The other end fell silent. I could feel he was enduring the same rib-striking pain I had just felt, but 10 times worse. Vivian. He squeezed out my name through gritted teeth. The next second, I heard a short muffled groan from the phone, followed by the loud sound of the phone falling to the ground. Then, there was Annabelle bursting in with a scream. Adrian! What's wrong, Adrian? Someone! Call an ambulance! Adrian is vomiting blood. I hung up the phone and tossed it aside. The world became quiet. I slowly retracted my pose, sat cross-legged on the yoga mat, and gently stroked my belly. Baby, well done. The phone screen lit up. It was a text message from Adrian's number. Vivian, this is Annabelle. Adrian is almost done for. The doctor says he might have a terminal illness and is in emergency treatment. Are you happy now? You venomous woman. Terminal illness? Looking at this message, the curve of my lips widened. This was even more interesting than I imagined. The news of Adrian suffering from a terminal illness spread like wildfire into the Lee family ancestral home. The next day, a black Rolls-Royce stopped directly at the villa entrance. Grace, the old madam of the Lee family, had arrived. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw the butler coming out to greet me, his face anxious. Madam, the old madam is here, in the living room. I didn't stop and walked straight into the entrance hall. In the living room, the atmosphere was heavy. Annabelle was kneeling by the sofa, holding a bowl of medicine, carefully spooning it to Adrian's mouth. Her eyes were red, her voice choked, looking haggard for love. Adrian, drink some medicine, you'll feel better after drinking it. Adrian leaned on the sofa, colorless, without even the strength to lift his hand, enveloped in an aura of death. Yo, Grace is here. The old lady doesn't tolerate any nonsense, she hates Annabelle's pretentious White Lotus act the most. The show is starting. The baby in my womb excitedly kicked me. I stood at the entrance without moving. In the main seat sat an elderly woman in a dark red cheongsam, her hair neatly combed, twirling a string of prayer beads. She was Adrian's grandmother, the stabilizing force of the Lee family. The old madam didn't look at the two of them, her gaze fell on me. What are you standing there for? Come over. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried an irresistible authority. I changed my shoes and walked to her. Annabelle's movement stopped, she lifted her head to look at me, a flash of resentment in her eyes. Adrian also struggled to open his eyes, his gaze swept over my flat abdomen, then moved to my face, his brows furrowing. Vivian, you still know to come back? His voice was weak, but the questioning tone remained. I ignored him. The old madam spoke, her voice deep. Adrian, I heard from Daniel that you're very ill. Annabelle immediately chimed in, eager to perform. Grandma, the doctors can't find the cause. Adrian is in so much pain, it breaks my heart to see it. I don't know what's wrong with him, but I swear, I'll stay with him no matter what. As she spoke, tears fell, dropping one by one on the back of her hand, full of genuine emotion. Ugh, such poor acting, it makes the baby want to vomit. I took out today's prenatal checkup report from my bag and handed it to the old madam with both hands. Grandma, I just came back from the prenatal checkup. My voice was calm, interrupting Annabelle's solo performance. The doctor said all the baby's indicators are perfect and very healthy. The old madam took the report and lingered on it for a moment. She lifted her head and carefully examined me. Today, I wore a loose dress, no makeup, but nourished well by the baby during pregnancy, with a rosy complexion and full vitality. The old madam's gaze moved from my radiant face to her own deathly pale grandson. Finally, it fixed on Annabelle's tear-streaked face. She said nothing, but her expression became profoundly meaningful. The air quieted, Annabelle's cries stuck in her throat. Suddenly, the old madam pulled my hand. She removed the entirely emerald green jade bracelet from her wrist and, without hesitation, slipped it onto mine. The bracelet felt warm and substantial. The eldest granddaughter-in-law of our Lee family should have this kind of complexion. The old madam's voice spread to every corner of the living room. The color drained from Annabelle's face instantly. Her gaze nailed to the bracelet on my wrist, the jealousy in her eyes almost materializing and surging out. I stroked the bracelet on my wrist and obediently said, "Thank you, Grandma." Adrian looked at me, at the bracelet on my wrist, then at the frozen Annabelle beside him. His usual controlling gaze was gone. In his eyes was a confusion and bewilderment I had never seen. Scumbag dad's remorse value detected plus 1%, pain temporarily reduced by 5%. TCH, only 1%, so boring. The baby snorted disdainfully. My hand paused. Only 1% remorse for 5% pain reduction? This deal isn't worth it. Looking at Adrian's brows relaxing slightly from the eased pain, I decided to add more fuel. I walked to him, bent down, and spoke in a voice only we two could hear. "Husband, look, Grandma still loves me, the eldest granddaughter-in-law, the most. Rest assured and recover, I'll take care of the company matters for you." After saying that, I picked up the bowl of medicine he hadn't drunk and, under Annabelle's resentful gaze, fed it directly into his mouth. Since the old madam left, Adrian became my shadow. Wherever I went, he followed. When I ate, he sat opposite, looking at the plate in front of me with a tense face. When I walked, he followed 3 steps behind, each step careful. He didn't dare command me anymore, but his eyes constantly monitored my every move. He heard these symptoms were all pregnancy symptoms for women, and he thought I was behind it. I couldn't be bothered with him. These days of being guarded inseparably were less about him seeking peace and more a silent contest. That night, I was sleeping soundly and turned over. The baby in my womb seemed to find a more comfortable position too, stretching lazily in satisfaction. So cramped, stretching my legs. I didn't feel much, just that my belly moved a bit. From the next room came a muffled thud of a heavy object falling, followed by a suppressed cry of pain. The door was pushed open forcefully from outside, and Adrian rushed in. He was only wearing a silk robe, collar open, forehead hair wet with cold sweat, a few strands sticking to his pale face. He held the door frame, one hand pressing his lower abdomen, his body trembling slightly from pain. "Vivian." He gritted his teeth, enunciating each word, "I order you to change your sleeping position." I sat up in bed and turned on the bedside lamp. Under the dim yellow light, his usually dignified face was twisted, revealing embarrassment. I looked at him, without moving or speaking. Irritated by my gaze, he strode over, looking down at me condescendingly. "Can't you understand human language?" I still looked at him silently. "Adrian," I finally spoke, my voice calm without a ripple, "who do you think you are?" My calmness stung him. The anger in his eyes burned brighter, his face twisted from pain and rage, leaning closer to me. "Don't forget," he roared recklessly, "you and this child are both gifts I prepared for Annabelle. She can't give birth, so you're just a substitute." The air in the room froze instantly. Damn. He still dares to shout. He still dares to say I'm a gift? Watch this baby's invincible fragrant headbutt. A violent churning came from my abdomen. Almost simultaneously, Adrian's words stopped abruptly. An unimaginable intense pain swept over him. He let out a piercing scream, his whole body falling backward, curling up on the cold floor, convulsing violently, making gurgling sounds in his throat. He lay by my bed, like a shrimp with its spine broken. I calmly watched him, seeing his utmost agony. Then, I slowly got out of bed, barefoot on the carpet, and walked to his side. I picked up his phone that had fallen to the ground. In front of his bloodshot eyes, I found Annabelle's number, dialed it, and pressed speaker. The call was quickly answered. Annabelle's sleepy yet coquettish voice came through. "Adrian? So late, do you miss me?" I squatted down, bringing the phone to Adrian's mouth. He was in too much pain to speak, only emitting beast-like howls. "Miss Annabelle," my voice wasn't loud, but clearly transmitted into the phone, "your Adrian seems broken." The voice on the other end instantly changed tone, all sleepiness gone. "Vivian? Why is it you? Where's Adrian? What did you do to him?" I looked at the man convulsing on the ground and chuckled lightly. "He's fine, just disobedient and needs fixing. Want to come see?" On the phone, Annabelle's screams mixed with the noisy sounds of things being knocked over, piercing and chaotic. I hung up and tossed the phone back onto Adrian. The world was finally quiet. Annabelle rushed in quickly. When she saw Adrian curled up and twitching on the ground, her steps halted abruptly, fear emerging on her pretty face. She didn't rush to help him immediately. She stepped back twice, as if looking at a monster. Then, her gaze bypassed Adrian, nailing onto me, her sharp voice breaking the room's silence. "Vivian! It's you! What did you, this vicious woman, do to him?" TSK, the so-called life and death companionship was just greed for his money. "Scumbag Dad, do you see clearly? Your white moonlight fears your death, but fears your madness more." The baby in my womb let out a light hum. In the gaps of intense pain, Adrian used all his strength to lift his head, looking at his beloved white moonlight. In those bloodshot eyes from pain, a trace of hope remained. But upon meeting Annabelle's eyes full of fear and accusation, that light shattered. The hope in his eyes turned to ashes. Annabelle felt guilty under his gaze. To prove her love, she suddenly seemed to think of something, turned and rushed into the kitchen. When she came out, she held a bowl of blackish soup, her face twisted with excitement. "Adrian, don't be afraid, I have a way." She rushed straight to me, pushing the bowl of medicine to my mouth. "Drink this fetal stabilizing medicine quickly. Once you're better, Adrian will be better." A pungent medicinal smell assaulted my nose, churning my stomach. I turned my head away firmly, pushing her with my hand. The soup spilled, dripping on the back of my hand, burning a painful red patch. "Drink it." Annabelle went mad, using her body to pin me down, her other hand prying my jaw. The bowl's rim had already touched my lips. "Stop." A stern shout came from the door. The door was pushed open by bodyguards from outside, and Grace, leaning on her dragon-headed cane, walked in surrounded by a group. She glanced at Adrian on the ground, then at the crazed Annabelle, finally resting her gaze on me. Her private doctor stepped forward quickly and snatched the bowl from Annabelle's hand. Annabelle stumbled from the force, spilling most of the soup. The doctor handed the bowl directly to the old madam, who, without looking, flung the entire bowl's contents to the ground. Sizzling sounds accompanied a burnt stench, corroding an ugly mark on the floor. The private doctor squatted down, just sniffed, and his face changed. He stood up and respectfully reported to the old madam, "Old madam, this isn't fetal stabilizing medicine. This is potent croton-tiglium powder, extremely aggressive. If a pregnant woman drinks it, she'll have massive bleeding and miscarriage within half a quarter hour." The air in the living room froze. Annabelle's face turned ashen instantly, she waved her hands in panic. "No. I didn't know. It was the servant mixed up the medicine." The old madam didn't speak, just raised her hand. A crisp slap echoed through the living room. Annabelle's face was slapped to the side, a clear 5-finger print emerging rapidly. "You dare touch my granddaughter-in-law and great-grandson?" The old madam's voice was light, but carried a bone-chilling coldness. Adrian witnessed all this. Lying on the ground, the intense pain in his body seemed numb, far less than the surging chill in his heart. He looked at the stunned Annabelle slapped, at the old madam with a face like still water, and finally at me. The substitute in his eyes, the gift he prepared to give away, was now protected by the Lee family's authority figure. And his cherished love wanted to kill his child. How ridiculous. The old madam no longer glanced at Annabelle, she turned to the bodyguards behind her. Throw her out for me. From now on, she's not allowed to step foot in any Lee family property. After speaking, she turned around, extending her hand to me, her usually stern face softening a bit. Vivian, were you scared? Help me back to the room, I have something to say to you. To salvage her reputation, Annabelle forcibly dragged the recovered Adrian to attend a grand charity gala. She wanted to reassert her ownership in front of all media. I didn't go. On the villa's giant screen TV, the gala red carpet was being live-streamed. In front of me was a super-large seafood sashimi platter, salmon, tuna, Arctic shellfish, each slice cut thick. Beside it was a large jug of fresh squeezed watermelon juice, ice cubes condensing water droplets on the glass wall. I picked up a piece of fatty salmon belly, dipped it in soy sauce and freshly grated wasabi. Mom, eat more. Tonight, give scumbag dad a social death deluxe package, late pregnancy frequent urination plus gastroenteritis, double strike. The baby in my womb excitedly kicked its legs. On TV, flashlights flickered. Adrian in a high-end suit, tall and straight, but his face lacked color. Annabelle held his arm, wearing a million-level white fishtail gown, smiling impeccably at the cameras. She looked determined to succeed. Just as the host began introducing them, Adrian's expression changed. A strong, irresistible urge surged from his lower abdomen. His body stiffened instantly, legs subconsciously clamping. This subtle action was captured clearly by high-definition cameras. Adrian? Annabelle felt his stiffness, her smile almost faltered, urging in a low voice. Adrian ignored her, sweat beading on his forehead. He abandoned Annabelle and rushed, almost fleeing to the venue's restroom. On the red carpet, Annabelle was left alone, her face alternating between pale and green under countless lenses and probing gazes. I took a sip of iced watermelon juice, sweetness melting on my tongue. The first wave was just an appetizer. After a few minutes, Adrian came out of the restroom, looking worse than before. He stood back beside Annabelle. Before she could question him, another more surging, uncontrollable feeling churned from his stomach. He tried to hold on. But physiological instinct crushed his proud willpower. After a loud and prolonged sound, an indescribable stench instantly spread outward from him as the center. Time froze for a second. Annabelle looked down, seeing on her pure white, million-value custom gown, a sticky, unsightly yellow stain. Her facial expression shattered completely. The venue fell dead silent. Then, reporters' flashlights exploded madly. Ah! Annabelle's scream pierced the gala night sky. That night, Adrian incontinence and Annabelle splashed with unknown liquid exploded across the internet. I turned off the TV, ate the last piece of tuna sashimi. The sound of keys turning came from the entrance. Adrian was back. He took off that expensive suit jacket and casually threw it on the ground. He looked utterly dejected, still carrying a lingering strange odor mixed with cologne and excrement. He saw me sitting on the sofa. He also saw the divorce agreement in front of me, already signed with my name. His pupils shifted, lips moved, wanting to say something. I pushed the document toward him. Sign it. My voice was calm. The pain will end. Adrian looked at the divorce agreement, at my already signed name on it. His hand shook, even the thin paper trembling with it. He didn't take it, just looked at me with bloodshot eyes. For the first time, those eyes showed pleading and a near-fear emotion. He didn't dare sign. I withdrew my hand, no longer looking at him. I directly picked up the already packed suitcase at the entrance. If you don't sign, that's fine. My voice was light, drifting in the spacious living room. But I'm leaving. As long as I don't see you and feel better, your illness will naturally improve." This sentence was the last straw that broke him. He rushed over like mad, arms open, trying to block me. Just as his fingertips were about to touch my sleeve, two black figures flashed in from the door, standing like two walls, unmovingly blocking him. They were the old madam's people. In one bodyguard's walkie-talkie, static buzzed, followed by the old madam's stern and cold voice. "Let her go. Adrian, when you figure out where you went wrong, then go find her." Each word from the walkie-talkie smashed into Adrian's face. He froze in place, all strength drained from him. I pulled the suitcase, walked past him without looking back. Behind me came a muffled thud of a heavy object falling. He probably fainted from pain again. I moved into a top-floor apartment the old madam had arranged for me long ago. Security was tight, the view open, and most importantly, no Adrian. As expected, he went crazy after waking up. "Mom, scumbag dad mobilized so many people to find us, but the old madam scolded them all back with one phone call. Now he can only drive himself, buzzing around the city like a headless fly, ha ha ha, it kills me. The baby in my womb gave me live updates every day." Listening, I watered my plants in a good mood. The old madam cut off all of Adrian's connections and financial support, making him taste isolation for the first time. I heard he couldn't sleep all night. The anxiety caused by pregnancy had brought him to the brink of a mental breakdown, and he had lost a lot of weight. He could only use the most stupid method, driving from hospital to hospital, and from confinement center to look for a place. The once lofty president of Lee Corporation now wandered like a lost soul in every possible place I might appear in the city. My disappearance made him completely panic. A week later, I had a prenatal appointment. Coming out of the clinic, a man in a white coat approached, gentle and refined. It was Kevin, the dean of this private hospital and my father's prized student. He took the report from my hand and gently said, "Everything is fine, no need to worry." "Yo, isn't this Uncle Kevin? Invited by Grandma?" Grandma said, "If scumbag dad remains unrepentant, she'll give me a new dad. Anyway, the Lee family has plenty who want to be heirs." Listening to the baby's complaints, I felt reassured. It seems the old madam really wants to teach Adrian a lesson. "It's windy outside, don't catch a cold." Kevin took off his white coat and draped it over my shoulders, carrying a clean disinfectant smell. We walked side by side in the hospital corridor. At that moment, my steps stopped. At the end of the corridor, by the obstetrics door, stood a person. His suit was wrinkled, chin covered in blue stubble, hair disheveled, exuding decadence. "Adrian." He stared fixedly at me, his gaze finally landing on the men's white coat on my shoulder that wasn't mine. He found me. Seeing me standing side by side with Kevin, the bloodshot in his eyes surged instantly. Jealousy and panic twisted his haggard face. He rushed over, grabbing my wrist. "Vivian, who is he?" Kevin stepped forward, blocking me behind him, expression unchanged. "Mr. Adrian," his voice was calm but carried an undeniable professionalism, "I am the private doctor invited by the old madam to care for Vivian." One sentence blocked all of Adrian's questions. "Old madam." These three words were the mountain pressing on his head. His hand loosened, his face showing defeat and confusion. Looking at him like this, a thought suddenly emerged. In the moment he was dazed, I deliberately slipped, my whole body falling toward the nearby cart with instruments. "Careful." Kevin, as a doctor, subconsciously extended his arm, preparing to steady me in the safest way. But someone was faster than him. "Adrian." He forgot all pain and reason, his body rushing over on the most primal instinct. He didn't reach out but used his own back to firmly protect my belly. Clang! The heavy instrument cart smashed into his back, making a huge muffled sound. The sharp edge of the metal tray cut a deep, bone-visible wound on his arm, blood surging out. He didn't even glance at it. He just stared fixedly at my belly, his voice trembling. "Baby. Is the baby okay? Warning." Scumbag dad's absolute protective instinct detected, remorse value instantly maxed. System core logic conflict. Unknown bug occurred. Sigh, this baby is the softest hearted. Probation. The baby's voice disappeared. The restless kicking in my abdomen also quieted. Everything stilled. The intense pain in Adrian's back receded instantly, the pregnancy simulation pain that made him wish for death vanished without a trace. Only the real burning pain from the cart impact remained on his back. He was stunned. A few seconds later, a fear deeper than pain gripped him. It wasn't relief, but panic. He was scared. He feared that this only pathological connection between him, me, and the child would break just like that. He abruptly pushed away the instruments on him, ignoring the deep wound on his arm, stumbling to kneel before me, hands suspended in midair, not daring to touch. Baby. His voice shook uncontrollably. Is he okay? Is he still there? In those eyes was unprecedented alarm. I didn't answer. I just looked at him indifferently, watching Kevin press gauze on his bleeding wound, watching him surrounded by doctors and nurses treating the injury. He didn't make a sound throughout, but his eyes fixed unblinkingly on my belly. I was arranged into a VIP ward. Adrian guarded by the bed, not leaving an inch. The old madam's bodyguard stood at the door, expressionless, neither letting him in nor driving him away. He guarded at the door, through the glass window, standing all night. The next day, Kevin came for rounds. He's still outside. Kevin tucked my blanket corner, voice gentle. I didn't speak. Kevin added, the old madam has already hired the best lawyer team in Beijing. I looked out the window, dawn broke. Adrian was finally allowed in. He changed into clean clothes, but the stubble on his chin and bloodshot eyes made him look dejected and disheveled. He moved a chair, sat 3 steps away, saying nothing, just looking at me. When lunch arrived, he clumsily opened the insulated container, ladled out a bowl of soup, wanting to hand it to me. His hand shook, spilling hot soup on his handbag, scalding a red patch. He didn't make a sound, set down the bowl, picked up an apple, and with that small fruit knife, peeled it circle by circle, carefully. Blood beads emerged from his fingertip, dripping on the white flesh, staining a bit red. He peeled off the bloody part, stubbornly handing the rest to me. I looked at the pitted apple he peeled, without taking it. In the afternoon, his lawyer came. Suited and booted, carrying a briefcase, expression solemn. I thought it was to discuss divorce terms. To give me money, make me shut up and leave. After all, this was his best tactic. The lawyer opened the briefcase, taking out not a check, but a shockingly thick document. Miss Vivian, the lawyer's voice was businesslike, Mr. Adrian voluntarily transfers all his real estate and 90% of Lee Corporation shares into an irrevocable trust fund set up for your child. You are the sole guardian. Looking at the document, for a moment, I thought I misheard. Adrian stood up, walked to my bedside. He didn't dare look at me, his voice hoarsely almost inaudible. I'll leave with nothing. I don't want anything. Vivian, please, give me a chance to atone. He lifted his head, eyes terribly red. A probation period. The room was so quiet you could hear breathing. I looked at him, at the pleading and despair in his eyes. After a long time I extended my hand. I didn't take the asset transfer agreement that could leave him with nothing. I pushed it back. Then, I looked at Kevin. He understood, drawing a thin paper from the file bag he brought. The divorce agreement. I placed it in front of Adrian, handing him the pen. Sign it. He looked at the agreement, then at me, his body trembling violently. He thought this was my final judgment. He picked up the pen, stroke by stroke, wrote his name at the end of the agreement. Adrian. He wrote for a long time. I put away the signed divorce agreement without glancing at him again. I pointed to the large pile of parenting books on the bedside table that Kevin sent in the morning. Your probation starts today. First assessment item, memorize all the books, I'll quiz you in 3 days. Adrian was stunned in place. After immense shock came survivor-like ecstasy. He nodded heavily, straightening his back, like a primary school student finally assigned a task but at a loss. Yes. He paused, finding the most appropriate address. Ms. Vivian. I leaned against the headboard, watching him carefully pick up the pile of books and flip to the first page.